Hello everyone, welcome back to Cybertix. Today we are going to solve day 9 challenge of 𝗘𝘅𝗽𝗋𝗚𝙀 of Cyber 2024, that is about understanding what is GRC mean. So keep watching this video till end, and without wasting any time, let's get started. So let's start with the day 9 challenge, that is a 9 o'clock, make GRC fun, tell no one. So let's just directly jump into the introduction of GRC, because this complete challenge is going to be completely theoretical. So government risk and compliance GRC plays a crucial role in any organization to ensure that their security practices align with their personal regulatory and legal obligations. Although in general good security practice help protect a business from suffering a breach, depending on the sector in which organization operates, there may be external security regulations that needed to be adhered to there. So let's take some examples in the financial sector, that is about the Reserve Bank regulation. In most countries, banks have to adhere to the security regulations set forth by the country's Reserve Bank. This ensures that each bank adheres to a minimum security level to protect their funds and information of their customers. SWIFT CSP, that is about the CSP full form is, we can directly click it over here, that is a cloud service provider is a company which offers scalable cloud computing resources on a demand. Banks use the SWIFT network to communicate with each other and send funds. After a massive bank breach result in $18 million fraudulence in the SWIFT transfer, SWIFT created the Customer Security Program, that is a CSP, which sets the standard of security for banks to connect to the SWIFT network. Data protection. As bank holds sensitive information about their customers, they have to adhere to the security standards created by their data regulatories in most of the countries. When you run a large organization with multiple different teams, how do you stay on top of all these regulations and ensure that good security is implied on by the all teams? This is where GRC comes in. They play a crucial role in understanding what external security standards, translating them into internal standards, and then ensuring that they are applied by all over the teams to help reduce the organization risk to an acceptable level. Let's take a quick look at the three functions of GRC, that is about the governance, risk and compliance. So let's start with the governance. Governance is a function that creates the framework that an organization use to make decisions regarding information security. Governance is the creation of an organization's security strategies, policies, standards and practices in alignment with the organization's goal. Governance also defines the roles and responsibility that everyone in the organization has to play to ensure these security standards are met. That is about the risk. Risk is the function that helps to identify, assess, quantify and mitigate risk to the organization's IT assets. Risk helps the organizations understand potential threats and vulnerability and impact that they could have in a threat actor where to execute or exploit them. By simply turning on a computer, an organization has some level of risk of a cyber attack. This risk function is important to help reduce overall risk to an acceptable level and develop contingency plans in the event of cyber attack. This is where risk is realized. Compliance. Compliance is the function that ensures that the organization adheres to all external legal, regulatory and industry standards. For example, adhering to GDPR law or aligning the organization security to an industry standard, that is about the NIST or ISO 27001. So, introduction to risk assessment. Before Max Kiddy and Glitch choose a e-discovery company to handle their forensic data, they need to figure out which one of these is the safest choice. This is where risk assessment comes in. It processes the identify potential problems before they happen. Think of it as checking the weather before going on a hike. If there is a storm coming, you know how to adhere to the time, and so you can either prepare or change your plans. So why are risk assessment are done? Risk assessment are likely reality check for the business. They connect cybersecurity to bigger picture with minimized business risk. In other words, it's not just about securing data but about protecting the business as whole. Imagine you are run an online store that collects customer information like name, address, credit card details. If the data gets stolen because of weak security system, it's not just the data that are at risk. Your reputation, your customer trust, and even your profit are online. A risk assessment could have helped you identify that weak point and fix it before anything went wrong. 𝗏𝐾D and 𝗏𝐽 assessing the risk of each e-discovery company has then decide which one is less like to have a data breach or other issues that could disrupt the investigation. Performing an assessment. This is most of the things are completely manual and theoretical things. So every business main goal is to generate revenue and profit, right? So for most businesses, cybersecurity does not directly contribute to revenue generation or profit maximization. Businesses need to decide to spend part for their high earned revenue on cybersecurity to avoid those risks of revenue or reputation loss resulting from a cyber threat. So business often takes these steps to achieve this goal. We will now walk through the process of completing a risk register. A risk register tracks the progress of risk mitigations and all the open risks. Example, such a risk register is shown in the given animation, which we can see it's on the Excel sheet. So identification of risk, how we can identify. To assess the risk, we must identify the factors that can cause revenue or reputation loss resulting from cyber threats. So this exercise requires carefully assessing the attack surface of the organization and identifying areas which might be harm to the organization. So let's take an example of unpatched web server, high privilege user account without proper security controls, third party vendors who might be infected by a malware connecting to the organization network, a system for which support has ended by the vendor and it is still in production. An organization might identify several risks in addition of this example. However, in addition to this just identifying the risk, this risk also need to be quantified. After all, the likelihood of materializing a risk on a cordon of an isolated servers differs greatly from a public facing server hosting or a web front. So similarly, impact of the risk materializing on a crown jewel such as main database server containing confidential information differs greatly from that development server with a dummy data, right? So every risk depends on the severity. Assigning likelihood to each risk, like how it is going to be impactable to in our organization. To quantify risk, we need to identify how probably it is going to risk will materialize. We can then assign with a number to quantify this likelihood. These numbers is often on a scale from 1 to 5. The exact scale differs from organization to organization and from framework to framework. Likelihood can also be probability of materializations of a risk. Example, importable. So likely that it might never happen. Remote, very likely to happen, but still there is a possibility. Occasional, likely to happen once or sometime. So probable, like to happen several times. Frequent, like to happen often and regularly. It might be noticed that while we are trying to quantify the risk, we still don't define the exact quantity of what constitutes several times and what constitutes regularly. The reason that the likelihood for the server which has a very high uptime requirements will be different from the server that is used infrequently. Therefore, the likelihood scale will differ from case to case and from asset to asset. So assigning impact to each risk, that what is the impact of it. So it can be defined into the 5 different scale, that is the information. Very low impact, almost non-existent. Low, it means that impact a limited part of some areas of the organizations or operations with little to no revenue loss. Medium, impacting one part of the organization's operations completely with major revenue loss. High, several parts of the organization's operations causing significant revenue loss. And the critical, that is about the posing an essential threat to the organizations. Who takes the risk ownership it means to say. So the last step of performing risk assignment is to decide what to do with this risk which we have found. We can start performing some calculation on risk itself. The simple calculation takes place the likelihood of the risk and multiply its the impact of the risk. Some risk registers make use for more advanced systems such as 𝙏𝙀. So assigning scores to the risk help organization to prioritize which risk should be remediated. While you may think the simple answer is to secure the system so there is no risk in real life, it isn't simple like that. So implementing more security costs more money, and it doesn't help if we spend more money on security than what we are risk losing if that particular risk are open. So in the last step we decide who owns the risk that are identified. These team members are the responsible for performing additional investigation into what cost should be close the risk and what we could lose if the risk is realized. In this case, where the cost of the security is lower, we can mitigate the risk more security controls. However, where it is higher, we can accept the risk. Accepted risk should always be documented and reviewed periodically to ensure that cost has no change. Internal and third party risk assessment is just like risk assessments are not just done internally in an organization but also be used to access the risk that the third party may hold to our organization. Today, it is very common to make use of third parties in the outsource keys function of our business. For example, small organization may outsource its financial division to the large auditing firms. Similarly, however, this change the risk as a compromised by the third party where we may not have full control over their security. Could risk result in a compromise of our data or sensitive assets. Such we need to consider this risk as a third party poses to us. So why do company do internal risk assessment? Internal risk assessment helps company to understand the risk have within their own walls. It's like talking a good look around your house to check if there are any leaks or broken windows. For example, if company finds that the software is outdated, it can prioritize updating it to prevent potential attacks. Internal risk assessment helps identify weak spot in their security, direct resources to the most important area, stay compliant with security rules and regulations. So why do companies do risk assessment of the third parties? Companies don't just assess themselves. They also need to evaluate the risk that comes from the working from the other companies like vendors, suppliers or the partners. This is called a third party risk assessment and it's important because one weak link in the chain could affect everyone. So let's make it simple. Max Kiddy and Glitch wanted to make sure whichever e-discovery company they choose won't leak or lose sensitive data. So they will review if these companies have good security measure to keep the data safe, follow data protection rules, align the security standards that MaxKD and Glitch have in place. So we will directly start with our practical. So we just have to click over the visit website and we are able to see. So I guess there is one, what does the GRC stand for? It stands for Government Risk and Compliance. So we can directly copy that over here. That is the Government Risk Compliance. Okay, just copy it over here and paste it out. Yep. What is the flag you received after the performing the risk assignment? Okay, cool. Now there is some instruction which they have given. You will be assessing 3 vendors based on the responses to security questions. For each vendors, review the vendor responses for each security questions, identify potential risk based on the responses and add them into the risk registry. For each risk, we have to provide a clear description of the risk, rate the impact and rate the likelihood. So risk score is automatically calculated by multiplying impact and the likelihood. The risk vendors scores is the sum of all the risk of that vendor. So we just have to identify the vendor which has the total lowest risk. So over here we can see, let me just close this notification. There are total 3 vendors. So we have to solve it one by one. Vendor 1 is the company Red Fox and we have to solve that 3 questions. Depend on these questions we have to identify what is the impact level and the likelihood. So it's let's go to the first question. Data in transit and data at rest needs to be encrypted with AES encryption as a requirement for this project. What type of AES encryption does your company use for data in transit and data at rest? So the vendor has replied AES 256 for data in transits and none of the data at rest. So it is going to completely impact our risk, right? So there is a huge impact if the data is at rest. So just make it significant impact and expect it to occur. Anyone can directly access data which is not encrypted, and chances to see the data in clear text format. Clear text format. So we just have to add the risk. So it says that assessment could be improved. Your assessment indicates higher risk than expected. So we can directly edit it. So it may be occur over here. So this is a perfect assessment which we have done for the question 1. Similarly for the question 2, what kind of access control do you have to ensure data is accessed only by the authorized people? So the vendor has responded, data can be accessed by all the people on the relevant team and the global administrator. So whatever there is a chances, so there is a chance of insider threat of the company, right? So the impact level is little bit high, and unlikely it says it's a rare occurrence. So let's just add the risk. So it says assessment needs review. Your assessment indicates significantly lower than expected. So over here we have to increase the likelihood over here. So let's just see. Okay, lower the risk has been impacted. So let me just make it critical and add risk. So this is just a trial and combination, indicates lower risk than assessment. So likely, at risk, yeah. So let's go to the third question. How long do you keep client data and the case is closed? 1 to 2 weeks. That is will be there is a chance of data leak during this week, during these uh, recent days. Okay, we can add anything which we want. So during these days, over here the chances of that is little bit high, and it is unlikely, like it's a rare occurrence, but then too we can just check it out. It says again we need to review. Your assessment indicates significant lower risk than expected. So we can click on possible risk. Good assessment. Your assessment indicates lower risk than assessment. Okay, so likely, okay, indicates higher risk than it is accepted. So here possible risk could be improved. Okay, let me just check. Yep, this is let me just make it critical. Your assessment indicates higher risk than expected. So let me just make it possible. Yep, this is the perfect. So now we have completed the assessment of the vendor 1. Similarly, we have to perform for the vendor 2, that is the purple tiger. So let's go with the question 1. Same question, none for data at rest and none from the data in transit. Obviously, there is a chance of data leak which are directly in a clear text format. Okay, so this will be like completely high and very likely. This could assess be reviewed. Assessment indicates higher risk than expected, so we can make it higher. Expected to occur, no. Possible risk, okay, I guess I have to change it out to likely, and this, okay, I have to check it out this way. Yep, okay. So it was a very high significant impact, and there is a possibility of very likely to perform this criteria. So what kind of access control? Same question. The vendor has responded. Data can be accessed by all the people in the organization. There is a very high chance of internal threat in an organization if there is no access level. Okay, let me just make it properly. The severity is very impact and likely are expected to over here. This could be improved, so indicates lower than the risk, so very likely it is cool, because it was a very critical, right? So how do you link keep client data after the case is closed more than 1 month? It will be critical and likely. Keeping it more than 1 month could cause to data leakage, data leak. So let me just edit. So your assessment indicates lower than expected, so let me just edit. Very likely. Yep, it's a perfect assessment which we have done for the vendor 2. Similarly for the vendor 3, that is about the lavender raven. So let's just go to the question 1, and it says that none for data in transit and AES 256 for data at lost. So during the data transit, there is a chance of data leak which shows the information in clear text format, right? Format. So over here there is a significant impact and it may occur. So your assessment indicates a lower than risk than it is expected, so it is expected to occur. Question 2, data can be accessed by all the people on the relevant team and the global administrator. So it is the similarly which we have performed. So let me just directly add the question. There is a chance of insider threats. There is a chance of insider threats where data can be leaked to another organization. Okay, so let's just add the risk. Okay, your assessment indicates higher risk than it is expected, so let me just keep it likely. Okay, now the last question is about how long do you keep clients data after the case is closed. It says 2 weeks to 1 month. So is a chance of data leak if those case is in public, anyone can access it, which leads to loss of reputation to the another clients as well, right? So 1 month significant high expected to occur. Your assessment includes lower than risk, so it is completely very likely. Score is correct, but the impact and likelihood just need adjustment, so let me make it critical. Your assessment indicates higher than risk than it is expected, so over here we have to change it to higher or likely. Yeah, this is the perfect assessment. Let's just complete the, and you can see the vendor has given the likelihood and the impact over here, which is the just see it. Yeah, these are the scores. So the total scores is calculated by this impact, likelihood, and the total risk score is about. And after that, total risk from 3 questions is 26, 44, and 33. So the less risk is about the red fox. So we have completed the scores over here. Let me just copy the flag, paste it out. So this was a completely theoretical task of the GRC, and I hope we understand how to calculate the risk calculations and impact of the risk. So I hope you understand the basic working of the GRC team, as their task is mostly to review and understand the risk and follow the rules and the standards to keep the company safe from the cyber threats. If you like my video, please share and subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'll see you in the next challenge. Till that time, goodbye and Jai Hind.